I'm going to give a talk here called Do I Stay Christian? And this past winter, I was invited to join a book discussion group at Spirit of Grace here in River Falls. And the book they were reading and planned to discuss was Do I Stay Christian? By Brian D. McLaren. And It's the former Methodist church. Now it's called Spirit of Grace. I simply fell away from being a Christian. There was never, that I remember, any real discussion in my mind about it. When I was a child, my siblings and I attended Sunday school regularly, followed by church at 11. And later I became a member of the youth group, the choir, and I was confirmed after a year of Wednesday afternoon classes with the minister of our church. I enjoyed all of it because of my friends who had similar schedules and because it was a friendly, welcoming place. It was sensible. It was a social thing for me. For others in my family and in my circle of family and friends, the church and Jesus were important sources of comfort and direction. My mother's belief in a caring God was a big help to her as she suffered from severe rheumatoid arthritis for 20 years. My sister faces a different autoimmune disease and takes the same comfort in her Christian faith, and I'm grateful she has it. But the idea of spending time reading a book about something I don't think about very often and then discussing it was not that inviting to me. But then I thought I might learn something, and I did make it to a few of the discussions with the nice and smart, articulate folks at Spirit of Grace. The book is structured with the first 10 chapters arguing against staying Christian. We all know Christianity is the reason for a lot of terrible things that have happened in the past couple of millennia. Horrible persecution of Jews, starting well before Germany got so efficient at it in the first part of the last century. Around 1400, Pope Nicholas V gave the King of Portugal a document that gave him full and free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subjugate the Muslims, pagans, and garden variety unbelievers, and to reduce them to perpetual slavery and to take for himself their property and goods. I don't need to go on. We're familiar with the crimes and hypocrisy of Christianity, the ways it has elevated a certain kind of person, white, usually male, wealthy, powerful, over other kinds of people, usually black or brown, female or queer, poor, and powerless. The next 10 chapters of the book are arguments against leaving Christianity, and the final 8 are helpful to those who choose to stay Christian. The book did not convince me to return to Christianity. It did not interest me much, frankly, except for this. I found myself substituting American for Christian. The parallels, for me, between the two were remarkable. Do I stay American? Following the structure of the book, let me think of some reasons not to stay American. I actually have slides to go with this. Okay. First, let's talk about the cruelty of our government toward the people who were here first. Wounded Knee, the Trail of Tears, hanging 39 Sioux men in Mankato on the day after Christmas in 1862. Their leaders had been told that in exchange for giving up their land, the government, our government, would provide food and other supplies. But that was a lie. They and their families were going to starve. They struck out and killed hundreds of settlers, and it had to have been a terrifying way to die for those people. I'm not overlooking that. But if I imagine myself seeing small children starving because of broken promises, it is not hard to imagine myself striking out, even committing violence in the name of getting some justice. That's the scaffolding they built. I mean, doesn't that seem odd? Like you would take the time and use the resources to build like a community scaffolding so you could do 39, 40 at a time? Like, did they plan for that in the future? They were going to do that too? It's kind of like going to war instead of providing free daycare for kids. Not like we would ever do that. The first African people were forcibly brought to the New World in 1619. They were enslaved, the first of hundreds of thousands of humans brought to the shores of what would become the United States of America over the next 250 years. They built our farms, cities, and general economy, especially of the South. For their efforts, after their emancipation in 1863, they were simply declared to be free. No compensation, no reparation. Jim Crow. My dad went off to World War II, leaving a country in which some states required people of color to drink from separate water fountains and attend separate schools. Banks used skin color as a consideration in making loans for starting businesses and buying homes. Dad came back to much the same country. There are stories of German prisoners of war being able to eat in cafes where black veterans were denied entry. Environmental degradation. Plowing up the Great Plains, plus a series of droughts, resulted in the Dust Bowl. Some graves in the Little Pioneer Cemetery in my town were drifted over by dust that had blown for hundreds of miles. Our forests, waters, air, and soil have suffered as a result of the way our country treats its natural resources. Support for foreign dictators. Because this is a short talk, I'll just quote Wikipedia and say that in the 1953 Iranian, 1954 Guatemalan, and 1973 Chilean coups against the state, the United States participated in the overthrow of democratically elected governments in favor of dictators who aligned with the United States. Those are just a few. We still sell arms and provide intelligence to about 80% of the countries that are considered to be not free. Our country's current, right now, disregard for those suffering in other lands. Cuts made in the past 15 months have targeted the poor, the helpless, and the hopeless in countries such as Congo, Syria, Gaza, Ukraine, among many, many others. I hear various estimates of how many children are dying as a result of our inaction, and if the number was just one, that would be too much. But it is much, much, much more than that. How we treat children, immigrants, and the vulnerable in our country. I need not elaborate on that. We have just survived a winter in which some peacefully protesting Americans did not survive encounters with forces of their own government. I can go on. Who, given a choice, would remain American? Well, all of us gathered here. For one thing, it's hard to leave your home, family, friends, way of life, and language. I remember Garrison Keillor saying about the Norwegian bachelor farmers that the ones that had, long ago come from Norway, they could never be funny again. And that would be hard, wouldn't it? Moving to another country is expensive and complicated. We're comfortable here, despite our country's shortcomings. Are there positive things, other than our comfort, about our country that might persuade us not only to remain here, but to do so without shame? I think there are. Winona LaDuke and other members of the Indigenous nations that live here on this continent with us. I recently went to a talk she gave, and I marvel at the resourcefulness that she and her members of her tribe have shown in their work to develop a land-based economy that will allow them to keep their young people around rather than have to go elsewhere to find a good job. She was good-humored, interesting, interested in the audience, and just a great speaker. I wish we could get her to come here. Eagles. When I was a kid in the 60s, I'd have fallen over in deepest wonder if I'd seen an eagle. They just didn't exist at the time. Well, they did, but it was so rare to see one. The pesticide DDT was used to fight insects, and it bioaccumulates, so maybe a frog ate a bug that had eaten something with DDT on it, and then a coyote ate the frog, and then the coyote was hit by a car and became roadkill, and an eagle came down to feed on it, and all the accumulated DDT went into the eagle and caused the shells of her eggs to be so thin and weak that just by sitting on them and trying to keep them warm, the bird crushed them. DDT was banned, and now I see eagles several times a week. Old habits die hard, though, and I am excited by each sighting as if it were 1970 again. The 1619 Project. I recommend reading the essay that was in the New York Times Magazine a few years ago. Nicole Hannah-Jones is the author. There have been some arguments against it, but I listened to the essay on a long walk, and I was moved. She argues correctly, I think, that Black people have continually challenged our nation to live up to its ideals. All men are created equal. Thomas Jefferson owned, over the course of his life, 600 people. Owned them, could do what he wanted with them, and he did. While the war for independence was being fought, human beings were being bought and sold, families broken up. I won't go into the horrors. Somehow, enslaved people were able to hold on to their dignity. They resisted as best they could. One of our country's greatest citizens, Frederick Douglass, born a slave, taught himself to read. He escaped from a life of beatings and humiliation to become an orator and a writer. In his speeches and books and essays, he pointed out the hypocrisy inherent in our country's embrace of freedom and liberty. He could have left, but this was his country too, and he worked to make it live up to its ideals. Countless people of color have resisted and worked to do what the Declaration of Independence says we the people want, create a more perfect union. Their courage and example lifts me up. Minneapolis and us here in our town. Minneapolis showed the world that our government can't walk all over us without a vigorous response. We here in our community responded to the needs of our neighbors with food, money, jobs, safer lodgings, and transportation. It's still going on. The world likes a good story with a strong ending, but we all know it hasn't ended. So, do I stay American? As I went through the supposed antidotes to the bad things our country has done, I couldn't say they are not still happening, especially, I believe, under this administration. That is my strong opinion, and I'm still allowed to have one. My mother was born in Canada to Canadian parents. Her grandparents were also Canadian. Recently, Canada made changes to its citizenship law, and there's a strong chance I might be able to claim Canadian citizenship through ancestry. I plan to look into it, but even if I get a Canadian passport, I plan to stay in America, the United States of America. I was born in 1957. My parents and their friends worked hard and got modestly ahead. I grew up and went to a public school that was well funded. Mom bought us notebooks and pencils for the first day of school, but pretty much everything else was included in being a student at the school. It wasn't so even when my kids were in school here. My college interest rate for my loan was 2%. My country at that time was not perfect. There was the Vietnam War, of course. I was a small child when our CIA supported the assassination of the elected leader of Congo, Patrice Lumumba. I didn't know about that until I read the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. But President Johnson built on the legacy of FDR to make ours a great society. Social programs were created as part of the war on poverty. Medicaid, Medicare, the Food Stamp Act, these were born of that time. The Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965 to ensure that members of minorities could exercise their right to vote. In 1980, all that started to change for the worse, in my opinion. The current administration is working to roll back those social programs. The Voting Rights Act bit the dust just this week. In the book that inspired this talk, Brian McLaren argues that Christianity is not a solid, unchanging monolith. It can change. He thinks that a mature faith is one in which the health of the planet and the good of the community are central. I believe my country can change as it has constantly since July 4th, 1776. My dream for it is McLaren's for Christianity, a country in which the good of the community and the health of the planet are central to the decisions that are made. Right now, again, in my opinion, our leaders have lost sight of their responsibility to ensure that the benefits of freedom apply to everyone, not just the wealthy. It's going to be a heavy lift, but there are more of us than them. And as the people of Hungary showed the world last month, even with the cards stacked against them, people who believe in truth and justice can eventually prevail. So, I'm not leaving because I had the best of this country, and now it's my duty to do my part of saving it for those who come after me. I'm not leaving because it wouldn't be fair to leave Anne and Don and Allison and David and all these other people who are engaged in the same project. I'm not leaving because Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address is so simple and inspiring. I want to live in the same country he helped to save. There are so many good people here, literally here in this room, here in our community, here in our country. We're all working in our ways to save democracy so we can continue to perfect our union. I don't see a lot to encourage us at the moment, but because I was raised in America, I believe in happy endings, sooner or later, if we work at it. So I'm staying American. Okay, any questions?
This is great. Thank you so much, Maureen. You're always a fabulous presenter, and this is so interesting. So I have friends who are Catholic. I was raised Catholic too, and I have friends who are Catholic, and occasionally, after a couple glasses of wine, I ask them, why do you stay there? Why are you staying in that church? And it's that same answer, is this is my church. I'm not going to let my church, I'm going to stay here and influence my church. And I do think that the Catholic Church is moving forward.
Look at the Pope.
Yeah, the Pope. I think there are positive things happening there. Let's not bail on it. Let's stay in it. David and I were at a wedding for two gay men who were Catholics, and they wanted to be married in the Catholic. They want to stay Catholic. They don't want to leave the church. They said it's our church, and just as you said, it is our country, and we can't let it down. We have to stay and make it better and better. Early this morning, though, I was listening to a podcast, and quite a bit of the podcast was filled with Margie Taylor Greene's talk in Texas yesterday, I think it was, and to a group of Republicans and Libertarians. And holy mackerel, she's seen the light. But I thought, this is an interesting world when Margie Taylor Greene is presenting wisdom.
Yeah.
I want you all to know that gay wedding was held in a community auditorium. And it was beautiful. And it was the whole Catholic service in a community auditorium.
Wow.
And Maureen, some of those black American soldiers that were with the German POWs, those were active duty guys. That was during the war. And the German POWs got to sit in the main floor of movie theaters, and the black American active duty servicemen that were guarding them had to sit in the balcony. And I loved your slide on the Voters Act, the Voting Rights Act, because as recently as 2006, when that was renewed and extended, most recently, the vote in the House of Representatives was 330 to 33, and the vote in the United States Senate was 98 to nothing.
Wow, 20 years ago.
So there is, in 2006, so there is hope.
Wow. I think I should get a little credit for being brave enough to talk about history when David's around.
Hear, hear. That applause is for you. Yeah, all good? Thank you, Maureen. Thank you there. Thank you, Prescott. Thank you, Maureen. You are always so clear thinking and well-researched. I just wish more people would get the benefit of your perceptions and your analysis. Have you ever thought of other places that would entertain, or maybe we should think of as a congregation, other places that would entertain that kind of conversation, that kind of presentation? Because I think it serves us all so well. You pulled from religion those things that are so applicable to what we're standing for in democracy, and it just could go well beyond our how many years we are here. So,
Well, that's nice of you.
yeah.
That would cut into my podcast listening time. I do.
So the question, do I stay American, infers that we can somehow change our citizenship. So after living in the Congo, Sierra Leone, Morocco for a considerable amount of time, and talking to people who want to come to America but cannot because of immigration policies, etc. It's not that easy to go someplace else, even for Americans. New Zealand, I've looked into it. You've got to make a financial contribution to the country, or at least show that you can support yourself admirably. So I always felt when I was in those other countries, why don't you just, instead of dreaming about America, which is not that great after all, why don't you stay and help build your country? It's hard. So now you're making the same argument. We should stay and help
Yeah.
build this country. Got a long way to go still.
I remember my mom thought, I heard her say once, we should let anyone who wants to come here and study, but they have to go back and use what they learned to make their country better. I don't know if I'd be that hard about it, but I do think that's a good way. My daughter is in the process of becoming an Irish, I don't know if citizen, but in 3 years, they'll be able to apply. And they just ended up there because of the job, not because of great political desire. But yeah, the other countries aren't just dying for Americans to move there. In Kinsale, down by Cork. Prescott?
I think it was fascinating this week to have the King of England lecturing the American Congress and President, to the extent he can understand it, about the values of democracy, considering the country that we had a war with 250 years
Yeah.
ago. And I think it, in some sense, it proves your point in terms of the strength of the concept of the American experiment, that we've influenced the country we left to the extent that they're now reminding us of what we accomplished or what our vision is.
Yeah.
Really fascinating.
Yeah, good point. Thank you.